Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and, well, peel back the curtain on the global economy. When we think about corporate power, we almost always picture the stuff we can clearly see. But today we're exposing the invisible economy. We're talking about the massive, totally hidden companies that quietly run the world. Section 1. Beyond the famous brands. We all know the famous consumer brands, right? The ones competing tooth and nail for your attention. I'm talking about names like Apple, Amazon, Tesla, companies where a single product launch or even just a random CEO tweet makes international news. But on the flip side of that, you have these unseen B2B or business-to-business giants. They don't sell directly to you, they absolutely don't fight for headlines, and they definitely don't have celebrity CEOs. Instead, while everyone is busy watching the famous brands duke it out, these highly specialized companies have quietly built control over the very systems our modern world relies on. Which brings up a really fascinating question, one that kind of challenges our whole perception of economic power. What if the most powerful companies are actually the ones you've literally never heard of? Like, what if the businesses with the greatest influence over global trade, technology, and manufacturing operate almost entirely in the shadows? Let's look at Section 2, the hidden global giants. Just take a quick look around you right now. Glance at your smartphone, maybe the refrigerator in your kitchen, or even just your morning cup of coffee. Before you ever lay eyes on a finished brand name product, there is an impossibly long, massive supply chain operating entirely behind the scenes. Raw materials are extracted, highly specific components are manufactured, and goods are hauled across entire oceans long before a factory even starts assembly. As consumers, we really only recognize the brand at the very end of this crazy journey, but it's those quiet companies handling all the preceding steps that are capturing the enormous value. And honestly, one of the absolute best examples of a hidden giant is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, better known as TSMC. Now, you've probably never bought a single item directly from them, yet they manufacture the impossibly tiny, incredibly complex advanced chips that power all the world's leading tech. Your phone, AI systems, cloud servers, the car you drive, they absolutely depend on TSMC. Our modern world's reliance on this single, quiet fortress of engineering is, well, it's almost terrifying. In fact, experts pretty much universally agree that if TSMC stopped operating tomorrow, the global economy would feel the shock almost immediately. Modern tech needs chips that require just extraordinary manufacturing precision, and TSMC quietly became one of the world's most strategically important companies just by focusing purely on being the best at that one specific capability. But it's not just the tech industry, right? This invisible layer of control keeps literally every critical sector running. Take finance. Billions of transactions rely on unseen payment processors and data networks. Over in manufacturing, if you remove just one supplier of a specialized industrial adhesive, an entire automotive factory grinds to a halt. Or food and agriculture. The familiar brands sitting on your cereal box are entirely propped up by massive, quiet commodity traders managing supply chains across continents. And speaking of moving things across continents, 90%, let that sink in, around 90% of global trade by volume moves by sea. Almost everything around you right now probably spent some time inside a shipping container. This staggering scale is controlled by massive logistics companies coordinating ships, ports, and railroads. They hold incredible, quiet power. And the only time we ever really notice them is when, say, a giant ship gets stuck in a canal. Moving on to Section 3, building an unbreakable moat. So how do they actually do it? Well, it all comes down to the ultimate barrier to entry. We are talking about tens of billions of dollars and decades of specialized engineering expertise. These companies aren't fighting for your attention. They compete through irreplaceable knowledge. I mean, building an advanced semiconductor fab or a global logistics network isn't exactly a weekend startup project. This creates an absolutely unassailable economic moat. By focusing on just one single capability, they create a compounding cycle of dominance. First, they specialize intensely. Maybe it's mastering one specific chemical or one niche software platform, and that builds deep, irreplaceable expertise. Then, that expertise earns them remarkable trust with massive corporate clients. And once you have that unshakable trust, you get immense pricing power. That power funds the next generation of innovation, and the cycle continues. They just grow steadily, dominating their space without anyone batting an eye. Which brings us to Section 4, the invisible advantage. You see, remaining totally invisible, it's not an accident. It's actually a deliberate and highly profitable strategy. Consumer-facing brands lead a pretty fragile existence. They have massive ad budgets, they face constant public scrutiny, and they literally live in fear of the next viral PR nightmare. But hitting B2B giants, by staying out of the spotlight, they avoid all of that drama completely. They get to quietly focus entirely on engineering, operational execution, and their clients. For them, less attention literally equals more concentration. Because of that intense focus, their business relationships often last for decades. You or I might change our favorite brand of shoes on a whim, but global corporations, they don't switch suppliers easily. Testing alternative suppliers takes an incredible amount of time. Getting new certifications costs millions of dollars. And honestly, the risk of an operational disruption is just way too expensive to gamble on. For a major manufacturer, unshakable reliability matters infinitely more than brand recognition. Finally, Section 5, when the system breaks. Now, here is the catch. This intense specialization creates immense fragility right alongside all that power. Because these hidden giants are so deeply embedded into everything we do, they can become very dangerous single points of failure. Whether it's a natural disaster, a sudden cyber attack, a localized factory fire, or a global pandemic, an event hitting just one specialized supplier can send shockwaves across continents. It can literally halt entire global industries in their tracks. And while we've all lived through this recently, haven't we? Suddenly, companies very few people had ever heard of became front-page news. Why? Because the global economy literally couldn't function without them. The world learned the hard way during recent supply chain crises that power isn't always visible. These companies never wanted the publicity, but their massive, quiet influence meant that when they had to stop, our modern lives stopped right along with them. This all brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought about the true nature of global economic power. I want you to really ask yourself, are the strongest businesses actually the loudest? To wrap up this explainer, the answer to that is a definitive no. The strongest businesses aren't always the loudest. They don't need flashy product launches or viral marketing campaigns because their customers already know exactly who they are. So while famous consumer brands are out there competing for headlines, these quiet giants are the true, indispensable engines of the modern world. They're the ones building the factories, moving the cargo, designing the precision components, and solving the insanely complex problems that keep everything running. Sometimes the companies that quietly control the world are the ones you've never noticed at all. And honestly, perhaps that is exactly how they prefer it. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope you walk away with a totally new perspective on the invisible economy operating all around you.